Hey guys, I was asked a question on one of my last videos that I would very much like to answer. And that was, what is my story with Kokopelli, my patron? And I've never been asked this question, which is very surprising because I am a female that works with a male fertility god. So today, what I am doing, I have a lovely cup of tea with my Cheshire Cat mug, my absolute favorite, and I'm doing some book work, book of songs, book work. So I'm also doing laundry. So I decided to multitask and answer this question because it's something I've been thinking about for the last few days and just something that I would very much like to answer. And if any of you also work with this particular deity, I would love to hear your story too. Because I have yet to meet another pagan that actually works with this specific deity. So for those of you that are, just being introduced to this god, you don't really know who he is. Kokopelli is a Native American fertility god who carries the unborn babies of the world on his back. So he is heavily associated with birth and pregnancy, male virility, agriculture, changing of the seasons, that kind of thing. And he's also a god of music. So he is a patron for a lot of musicians, as he plays his magical flute. The myth goes that if you hear Kokopelli's flute, then you will very soon find yourself pregnant or your significant other pregnant. And lastly, Kokopelli is also a trickster god. And it has been my experience that unlike trickster gods like Kokopelli or Kokopelli, unlike trickster gods like Loki or Anansi, he doesn't play tricks on you just for the hell of it. He plays pranks on you to show you something about yourself, something that you're supposed to be learning or doing, or something that you need to heal, something that you need to work on, some kind of lesson that you're just not getting any other way. And for a lot of people, myself included, that is a very difficult thing to come to terms with, is working with a trickster god in general, but working with a trickster god who uses that power of, trickery to introduce you to a part of yourself that maybe you're afraid of, or that you just thought didn't apply to you, or anything like that. It can be very difficult, but I promise you it can also be very, very rewarding. So, quick, generalized story how I came to work with this god. So, in January of 2012 is when my journey began, my pagan journey. And I was actually introduced to the divine feminine, so the goddess archetype first. She came to me in a dream. And it was very shortly after that I met a man that I fell in love with, who basically had Kokopelli under his wing, so to speak. Or he was under Kokopelli's wing, so to speak. There we go. I just realized I got that phrase flipped around. So I was with this guy for almost, I want to say like a year and a half, maybe, if even that. I honestly don't remember how long it was, but I know it was a pretty good stretch of time. And Kokopelli came to me numerous times when I was with this person. And every time I would just shut him down, because being a female that works with a male fertility god, that's just not normal, right? It's not healthy. It was not good for my feminine energies, right? Or at least that's what I thought. So, you know, I just basically shut him down and refused to hear anything that he had to tell me or to show me. And when that relationship ended, he came to me again and basically pointed out all of the areas in that relationship that were meant to be a lesson from him, from Kokopelli. And at that point, I was just furious. Oh, I was so upset, because it was my first big experience working with a trickster god. And I couldn't believe how stupid I had been, or, you know, I felt like I had been stupid, and how obvious things should have been, and that kind of thing. So I deliberately stepped away from him and from my path. At that point, I started working with angels, and I started studying Christianity, Judaism, and Islam again. I have always been interested in world religions, different paths, different faiths, and just basically taking what I feel is right for me from each one. That has always been how I have felt ever since I was a child. And so this time, you know, I gave up Kokopelli and I got back into just studying monotheistic faiths and trying to find bits and bobs within them that I could apply to my life at that time. And then we moved back up to Iowa. At the time we were in Arkansas. We moved back up to Iowa. And Kokopelli came to me again through a woman who lived in my father's apartment building. And she was a grandmother. I don't mean that in the literal sense, although I do believe she had grandchildren. But grandmother is a term of respect for the elder and for the wise person. So this woman was a grandmother, and she was a teacher for me. And she gave me all of the tools that I needed to get back into Native American spirituality and figuring out what exactly worked for me. And Kokopelli came to me through her again and again and again and again. And just like before, I would just shut him down every single time because I didn't want to work with him. I wanted to work with divine feminine energies. So I was working with Morrigan and Brigid, and I started working with Kuan Yin at that time, who is still my matron goddess. And, you know, after, I believe it was a year, that woman moved away. Like, she moved out to the East Coast, so where I could not reach her. And, you know, at that point, I was very interested in Native American spirituality again, so I worked with Great Spirit, I worked with Grandmother Spider, I worked with the Thonka. At one point, I even worked with Coyote Spirit, another trickster who uses his tricks to teach lessons, but doesn't have such a foreboding energy as I felt Kokopelli had. And so I just basically followed that path up until 2 years ago, when Kokopelli brought to me another man. And this was his biggest trick of all on me. And I am so grateful that he did it. But this person, this man, he walked me down a specifically Celtic path. Druidry to be exact, which I've always had an interest in. It just never felt right. The practices never felt right for me. So I never did any kind of druid work, druid magic, anything like that. But this man, he was walking me down that path. He wanted me to walk it with him. And for whatever reason, I wanted his approval. Yeah. So I was put into this somewhat abusive relationship, but all the while I had the choice to walk away. I completely had the choice. This man was not coercing me. He was not being physically or verbally abusive. It was just, I felt like I needed his approval. I had to have him in my life. And I still have no idea why. But that relationship and just the feeling of being so uncomfortable, it built and built and built up until a year and a half ago. I made the mistake of going to visit this man during a period, during a time when he was not very stable. And he was just, I don't know what on earth possessed him, but basically the relationship ended with a rape kit and months of therapy. And so for, that 6 months after that, I was just numb and empty, and I took down my altar. I put away my magic books. I fought with the urge to destroy my Book of Shadows at that time. And, if Kokopelli or Kuan Yin or, one of the angels that I had worked with, if any of my ancestors had come to visit, I was unaware of it. Because I had completely shut everything down. I was just not in a good state. And within the first 3 months of that, I mean, that's all I was just numb. I threw myself into stories, books, TV shows, and I would purposely mess with my sleep schedule so that I wouldn't dream and I wouldn't remember my dreams. And so then I remember the very first dream that I had in those 6 months after, the ending of that relationship. The very first dream that I remember having, I was playing a violin. And my entire life, I have loved the sound of a violin. I have loved the sound of orchestral music and orchestral instruments in general, but particularly the violin. But because my mother was a single mom, I never pursued actually learning how to play the instrument because I knew how expensive it was and I knew how difficult it was, but it just was something that I never thought was within the realm of possibility for myself. Excuse me. So, in January of this year, January 21st to be exact, I remember every detail about this day. About this experience, not the whole day. But I had dreams of playing the violin for the last 2 or 3 months before this. And so I had done some research into it and basically brushed it off as like a past life memory. That was just resurfacing as a form of therapy for myself. Because I love the sound of a violin. I love artists like Lindsey Sterling and Taylor Davis and I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Escala, Escala, but, you know, Secret Garden, that kind of stuff. I love that music. And so that day in January, I was having a sort of meltdown, which had become a regular occurrence for me at that time. So I did the only thing that really truly brought me comfort. And that was I got in my car and blasted some music and intended to drive down to the river. I live in a city that is right on the river. Like, you can go up to it, and then on the other side is another city. But the mighty Mississippi River, there is a spot that's about 5 minutes from where I live that it's a boat dock. And so I'll go sit down there and listen to the water, because it actually comes in and out like the tides at that particular spot. And then I can watch seagulls when I go down there. During the spring and summer months, I can watch bald eagles. You know, Great Spirit made manifest. And it's just such a calming experience for me. It always has been. So it was my intent that day to go down to the river. But that's not actually where I ended up. I became conscious in the parking lot of my local music shop. And the first thing that came to mind was all those dreams that I had been having of playing a violin. And I realized there is something in there that is going to help me heal from this. That is going to not necessarily fill the hole that I have been feeling in my spirit, but will actually help me to heal it, to close it up. So I went in and, you know, I remember all the details of this experience, but I won't relay them to you right now just because it's it's just a great memory. But I went in and through a series of events ended up walking out with a rental instrument to try. And at that point, I had no idea how to play a violin in any way, shape, or form. I knew the correct posture for holding it and how your hands should be moving when you play it, but it's a very physically challenging instrument. Let's put it that way. And so I got home, and the very first time that I actually picked this instrument up and, you know, drew a bow over the strings, I just felt it was like coming home. If any of you have ever experienced that, it was like coming home. So this is actually how I work with Kokopelli, is with this particular instrument. I mean, I do prayer work with him, but for the most part, he, being a god of music and just, you know, masculine divinity, he wants action over words. So I work with him via a physical musical instrument and the learning process that comes with it. Whereas with Kuan Yin, it's basically prayer work and meditation. Excuse me. So, one of the things that I kind of wanted to share with you guys in terms of how I work with Kokopelli, this is just an example. I mean, he's done a lot of things similar to this for me, but this one is just so fresh in my mind, and if I start crying, I apologize, because I cried when it was happening, I just felt very relieved and comforted, and I felt very supported at the time. So I am a lunch lady for my local school district, which means I work with children. I started as a cashier 3 years ago, so I had very one-on-one time with kids. And at the time, I was just, I was a hot mess. Like, I had no idea how to work with these kids because I don't have any kids and I am an only child. And I never had a whole lot of exposure to children. But Kokopelli, being a patron of children and a guardian of children, he made sure that I got that job, and I have been moving up ever since. In 3 years, I started as a part-time cashier, and now I'm a full-time head cook in 3 years, which I owe to Kokopelli. But I went from being a cashier to one of the head cooks at a different school, and I ended up falling in love with the work because I enjoy a challenge. And now I am at a different school, and it's a much smaller school. Much smaller. I went from about 1,900 kids down to 400. So I tell people I have 400 babies. And they're little kids. I work at a school that's K through 8, where I had been working up at a high school. So now I'm at this K through 8, and even though I'm one of the cooks, I do get to spend some time with my kids, and I love it. I absolutely love it. But the last few weeks have been very, very difficult because my helper that helps set up my food for the next day and helps get ready for, lunch service and all that, she's been sick, so she has been gone, which means that I've been doing the work of 2 people. So I haven't been able to get out into the lunchroom and see my kids. I haven't been able to stand in the dish room and talk to them when they bring their trays up. I haven't been able to jump on the serving line and ask them how their day has been when they grab their food. And it's just been wearing me the heck out, man. I love my kids. I need their energy during the day. And so Thursday was just, oh my goodness, it was terrible. Me and my manager don't get along. We are 2 very opposing personalities, and I don't respond well to people that take power trips in any way, shape, or form. I don't respond well to it. And she does that a lot. So we just don't get along. And she's been making my experience at this school very, very difficult. And so I came home Thursday at the end of that day, and I cried and I ranted and I broke a couple of things. I was to the point that I was ready to walk into work Friday morning and hand in my resignation. I was so fed up with it. And so before I went to bed Thursday night, I said a prayer to Kokopelli. I asked him to show me again why I am here. Why am I working with these kids? Why am I at this particular school? Why am I in the school district? Like, just why? What is my purpose here? And if it has changed, show me. Show me what it is I'm supposed to do. And I left him an offering of tobacco and I lit a candle offering, and I went to sleep. And Friday, he answered me in 500 ways. Well, I guess 400. Because all throughout the day, every time I turned around, there was a kid there asking a question or, complimenting my headband, or asking if they could get, this fruit instead of this fruit, or, walking in to show something that they worked on in class. They were everywhere, all around me, and I got to spend pretty much the whole day with my kids. And I realized that they are the sole reason that I am doing what I am doing. They're the sole reason that I am here in this place, at this time, at that school, in that kitchen. And all I could do was cry, because it was just such a relief. And the beauty of it is that's how a trickster god usually works, is they show you what it is you need, not what you want. And it's up to you whether you accept it or not. But if you choose not to accept it, then you will have to accept when your path gets changed. Because a trickster or any deity will only tell you something so many times. And if you don't listen, they'll offer you something else, or they'll just walk away. But that is my lovely ramble on my patron deity. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. If any of you work with this particular deity, I would love to hear your stories too. Because like I said, I have yet to meet another pagan that works with Kokopelli. And it would just be so encouraging, I think. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Namaste and blessed be.